Hey, what's up everyone? I think it's about that time that you learn how to pilot the robot, and I'm here to teach you. I'm Filth Nasty, and today we're gonna go over some of Sentinel's fundamentals so you can finally neutralize the opponent. Let's start off with a quick overview with some of the more useful moves in his move list. First up is his mouth beam. You can do it while standing and while crouching, and this is a ground only move so you can't do it in the air. I have a lot more to say about this move, but let's leave it at that for now. Rocket Punch is quarter circle forward and either of the punch buttons. If you do light punch, you get a downward rocket punch. If you do heavy punch, you get a straight rocket punch. And if you do the Z motion or the uppercut motion, you get an upward rocket punch. And that one's really good for air combos. You can even retract your rocket punch by holding back and then pressing either of the punch buttons. Sentinel Force is quarter circle forward and either of the kick buttons. Light kick sends out 3 drones that you can control by holding up or down. Heavy Kick sends out his carpet bomb drones, and you can hold Heavy Kick to delay the dropping of the carpet bombs. They both cause great chip, but the carpet bomb drones cause a little bit more. Both variations can sometimes provide some good defense against opponents coming down on top of you. Flight mode is quarter circle backwards and both kick buttons. This can be done on the ground and in the air. Super number 1 is Hyper Sentinel Force, which can be done with quarter circle forward and both kick buttons. Super number 2 is Plasma Storm, which is done with quarter circle forward and both punch buttons, and it's also mashable for additional damage. Super number 3 is Hard Drive, which can only be done in the air, and you do it by pressing quarter circle forward and then both punch buttons. Alright, I think that's good for the move list overview. That's not all of his moves, of course, just some of the more important ones. One of the things you want to get used to ASAP is cruising around in flight mode. It's definitely scary at first because you can't block in flight mode, but after a while you get good at determining whether you should or shouldn't be flying. Flying is really good for both defense and offense, so trust me, you definitely want to get used to it. Sentinel's flight mode is really fast, so if you just use it to hold back, or even straight up to run away from opponents, it can be really effective. It's even fairly difficult for air dash characters like Magneto and Storm to catch you while you're evading like this. It's not impossible for them to catch you, but difficult, so don't get too comfortable. Depending on how high you are, you can avoid a lot of ground attacks like EM Disruptor, Unibeam, cable gunshots, etc. One thing that you can never get hit by, even if you're at the lowest height, is Storm's Horizontal Typhoon, which is actually a big deal because that causes a lot of hit stun and block stun. You can also do things like avoid rocket punches in scent battles, and oftentimes you even have enough time to just fly up to the Sentinel and do an air combo, if they're not retracting their rocket punch, of course. Now onto some ways that you can use flight offensively. As Sentinel, it's usually favorable to be above or even on top of your opponents, because he has some really good buttons in the air, specifically his light kick and his heavy kick. You can really dominate some opponents with these buttons, which is usually called stomp pressure or even reflight pressure. This is what it looks like. You gotta be careful though, because there's plenty of ways that opponents can catch you slipping while you're flying around in the air. Another really useful thing is that you can call assists during flight mode. Definitely use this to your advantage as much as possible, but don't get carried away and call them carelessly, because I would hate for your assist to finish. Let's quickly touch on Sentinel's super armor. This man's is so tanky that he can take multiple hits before he gets staggered. Here's what hits look like on weak, sorry ass characters with no super armor, and this is what they look like against absolute specimens. So yeah, you gotta hit this big boy twice to stagger him. This also means that you can't raw launch Sentinel while he's standing, so keep that in mind before you go launching. He has no super armor when he's jumping or flying. Alright, I think that about covers it for super armor. Let's jump to learning about chip damage caused by normals. Sentinel is the only character in the game that causes chip damage with his normals. His heavies do just a little bit more than his lights. So a lot of times it's good to just throw out some normals safely because that chip damage definitely adds up. Now let's talk zoning tools. Sentinel's an excellent zoner, and if you want to be good with the robot, you have to learn how to zone. Zoning tool number 1 is his mouth beam. The beam goes across the entire stage and it has 2 variations, standing mouth beam and crouching mouth beam. Crouching beam is a little faster than standing beam, but standing beam is still really good because it goes over Storm's Horizontal Typhoon and can prevent something like a Typhoon into Hailstorm. and it also nullifies drones from a Sentinel assist. A very common way to use mouth beams is by doing beam, fly, unfly, beam. It can catch opponents that are trying to rush in without blocking. It can also force an opponent to try and close the gap from the air, and this is when you can try and catch them with some of Sentinel's long limbs. And even if opponents block like 2 or 3 beams back to back, they're still eating a bunch of chip damage. One thing you need to look out for when using this technique is that you don't want to cancel your beam before it reaches the opponent from you flying too fast. It's really easy to get the timing down, so just practice it for a little bit. Another thing is that unless you're trying to purposely add a delay between your beams for like some mind games or something, it's generally best to do the fly-unfly portion of this as fast as possible so that more of your beams have a higher chance of reaching your opponent. Next up for zoning tools are his light kick, heavy kick, and heavy punch. All these buttons have some crazy reach. Light kick is really good for fishing for hits that you can potentially confirm into air combos or fast fly combos. Both light kick and heavy kick are really good for stomp pressure. His heavy punch provides a lot of coverage in front of him and even above his head. Using these wisely can be very rewarding, but you can still get got, so try not to overextend if you don't need to. Okay, now we're getting into some juicy stuff, the bread and butter combos. A simple and fairly high damage air combo when you're center stage is light kick, medium punch, rocket punch. This results in a hard knockdown with a flying screen, and oftentimes you're in a position where you can go for a high-low mix-up. A great combo that sets up for loopable Hyper Sentinel forces is light kick, medium punch, rocket punch into Hyper Sentinel force. Super basic, but god damn it is it effective. After that first HSF, you can follow up with either a standing or a crouching beam into another Hyper Sentinel force, or a straight or downward rocket punch into another Hyper Sentinel force. The downward rocket punch ends up doing a little bit more damage, but keep in mind that this is rollable. I do want to quickly call out that you can also do mouth beam and rocket punch into Hyper Sentinel force, but opponents can fall out of this specific combo more so than the others. So you can do it for a little extra damage, but in my opinion, mouth beam into Hyper Sentinel force is much safer. And one last thing about this combo is that adding a rocket punch pushes you back a little bit when you land a hit, so it could potentially get in the way of your dashes in between Hyper Sentinel forces, which I'll touch on next. I recommend practicing doing a dash in between your Hyper Sentinel forces to close the gap and set up for an air combo for some additional damage. Additionally, if you're close enough, you can even go for a normal jump up forward, light kick, medium kick, land, super jump into an air combo. There's 2 ways that you can do a safe raw tag off of a Hyper Sentinel force loop. One way is to do a straight rocket punch into Hyper Sentinel force and then raw tag as soon as you recover. Another way is to do a very slight pause, crouching beam into Hyper Sentinel force, and then again, raw tag as soon as you recover. A really good option when you're in the corner is to do a launcher, light kick, medium punch, rocket punch. When this is done out of the corner, it usually results in a hard knockdown that causes a flying screen that doesn't allow for a continuation of the combo. But since we're in the corner, you can add a heavy punch and a heavy kick after the rocket punch, and then after that, you have a few options. If your opponent is 2 hits away from death, you can OTG with a normal jump light kick into heavy punch. A different option that's a little bit fancier is going for the unblockable beam setup. If you didn't already know, Sentinel's beam, when timed correctly, is a true unblockable. The timing is pretty tricky, but essentially what you want to do is time your beam so that the last bit is around the center of the opponent's character as they wake up from a hard knockdown. And since we're on the topic of Sentinel's unblockable, I'll go ahead and throw in this tip as well, which is that you can also get unblockables on falling characters, and the same principle applies. You want to make sure that the opponent lands on the last part of your beam. It's most commonly used on incoming, but if you get good enough, you can really use it on any falling character at any time. Here's a neat frame kill trick that can help you land this more consistently. After killing a character, as soon as their body hits the ground, you want to do a normal jump heavy kick, and then as soon as you land, you go for the unblockable. I've had a lot of success with this trick, so it's definitely worth practicing. Alright, that's about it guys. I know there wasn't anything too advanced in this. I just mostly wanted to make this for people that want to learn Sentinel, but have little to no knowledge on how to play him. My plan is to hopefully sometime soon make a more advanced video where I go over fast flies, unfly, reflies, and other things like that as well. So if that's something that you're interested in, let me know in the comments. If you're a complete beginner, it might be worth checking out my beginner's guide video. And if you're thinking about picking up Magneto and want to learn how to do the ROM Infinite, I got a video for that too. Alright, thanks for watching guys. Filth Nasty, out.